The Cold War occurred between 1945 to 1991 because of economic and political differences between the United States and the Soviet Union. At the Yalta Conference of 1945, Stalin pledged to allow democratic election in Eastern Europe. Soviets did not allow Germany to unify like the rest of the countries allowed them to, so they kept the land given to them in the first place. At the Potsdam Conference, Harry Truman, the U.S. president at the time, demanded free elections in Eastern Europe, but Stalin refused. The Iron Curtain divided the free people of the West from the oppressed people of the East. The Truman Doctrine established the U.S. policy of containment to defeat any country leaning toward communism. The Marshall Plan was made by the U.S. to prevent communism from spreading by aiding countries that were economically devastated. The Berlin Crisis was when Stalin starved out Berlin from access to food and supplies. Due to this, the U.S. produced an organized plan to drop food on the city of Berlin to supply them with goods.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO, was formed in 1949 in response to the Berlin Crisis. This was the democracies in Europe, U.S., and Canada to prevent Soviet expansion in Europe. As a result, from West Germany joining NATO, the Soviet Union formed the Warsaw Pact.
After World War II, Korea divided at 38th parallel, where the North was communist and the South was not. In 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. China sent hundreds to thousands of troops to push back forces in North Korea. The result was ceasefire in 1953, and the border was restored at 38th parallel.
Khrushchev went into power after Stalin died and reformed most of Stalin's views. He reduced the power of the secret police. Khrushchev's Gosplan shifted from heavy industry to consumer goods. This created central economic planning for Russia.
The Hungarian uprising was when nationalists demanded non-communist parties to be legalized. To end the uprising caused Soviet troops to respond and end the uprising.
Russia built a satellite called Sputnik, and that was when the space race began between U.S. and Russia.
The missile crisis was when the U.S. found out about missiles in Cuba pointed toward the U.S. The U.S. spent 14 days trying to come up with a decision to do, and they decided to take out U.S. missiles in Turkey if the Soviets took theirs out too.
Prague Springs was the biggest event in the Brezhnev era. They wanted more democracy and freedom of speech in the Czech Republic. The Brezhnev Doctrine was a response, and it said the Soviet Union could interfere in any socialist country if they saw the need to.
The West German Chancellor Willy Brandt improved relations with Eastern Europe and sought a peace settlement for Central Europe and the German question. The Salt-Wind Treaty in 1972 was signed by Brezhnev and Nixon to stop making nuclear missiles and reduce the number of missiles for each power. The final act of the Helsinki Conference officially ended World War II by legitimizing the boundaries of Poland and other East European countries.
When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, the U.S. refused the SALT II treaty and stopped shipments of grain and technology to the Soviet Union, ending the detente. Ronald Reagan took his stand against the Soviet Union with the Strategic Defense Initiative of Star Wars in 1983. This is a high-technology missile defense system. The revolutions of 1989 ended communist control of East Germany.
The coup in Moscow is when communists were upset by the loss of Soviet power and attempted to overthrow Gorbachev. The Cold War ended through the many failures of the Soviet Union, the economic crisis, and the betrayal of people by the government. In the end, the U.S. won the war.